Hi, my name's Roman Rappak. I'm part of the Mirrorshot Collective. We create immersive content, music, film, software and tools, and we showcase them at events that we put on in art galleries, in cinemas, warehouses and festivals, as well as virtual events in persistent multiplayer worlds. We've got members around the world working across different disciplines and different projects, and it's an open collective. So there'll be details at the end of this talk about how you can join. This talk is called Telling the Future Through Art and Technology, and it's based around this idea expressed really articulately by Marshall McLuhan. He said, I think that art at its most significant is a DW line, a distant early warning system that can always be relied on to tell the old culture what's beginning to happen to it. It's this idea that art is a window into the future, that by looking at the art being made today, you'd be able to understand what's going to happen tomorrow. This is something I find fascinating, and it actually makes a lot of sense. That artists have to look at the world around them, they have to find patterns and they have to find themes, and then they transmit those patterns and themes to their audience using the tools and technology of their era.
The artist, when he encounters the present, the contemporary artist, is always seeking new patterns, new pattern recognition, which is his task, for heaven's sake. His great need, the absolute indispensability of the artist is that he alone, in the encounter with the present, can give the pattern recognition. He alone has the sensory awareness necessary to tell us what our world is made of. He's more important than the scientist.
New tools and new mediums enable us to say new things and express things in new ways. Artists always rush towards these new tools or these new technologies. The motives of the artist for using the newest technology or working practices are not simply out of the obsession with novelty or consumer electronics. It's not to sell a piece of hardware or increase user adoption. It's to view and describe the world from a new perspective, to say something that hasn't been said before, in a way that hasn't been said before. So in many ways, our motives, or the motives of artists to use this technology, are the purest motives. We're using them as a tool of exploration, as a weapon of change. The work being created today in studios of many of the people watching this talk is a window into tomorrow. It's a window into not only the way that we are going to express ourselves and create work, but a window into the way societies will operate and interact with each other.
The present is only faced in any generation by the artist. The artist is prepared to study the present as his material because it is the area of challenge to the whole sensory life, and therefore it's anti-utopian. It's a world of anti-values. And the artist who comes in contact with the present produces an avant-garde image that is terrifying to the contemporaries.
Mirrorshot began as an experiment to see what would happen when musicians, coders, visual artists and writers got together to create something that was a hybrid or a blend of all these different disciplines and different ideas that were beginning to emerge. So the first step was to create a new kind of live performance, because it was clear that we would need something that we could tour and we could take around the world that showcased all of the incredible work within the collective. Digital artists, world builders, coders, filmmakers, musicians. And we needed something that would showcase it all in one condensed experience, which was a hybrid between a concert, an immersive piece of theatre, an installation, and a live multiplayer video game. To describe a little bit about how that works, the audience arrive at the show and they experience a concert through a VR headset that switches between reality via an onboard camera and completely virtual landscapes. The most important thing is they're all experiencing this together. At the same time as being in reality at a real event, they are distanced from reality and they are all simultaneously experiencing a virtual landscape, a virtual world, a world that only exists on the hard drive of the device that they're viewing it through. On a wider level, Mirrorshot was built to explore these new ways of communicating through art. A new kind of band, a new kind of collective, one that reflected the changes in the world around us. So it's an open collective, meaning anyone can join, and it was born out of this need to understand the new ways we're creating content and new ways that we're sharing it, to explore how the old ways of creating art and sharing art are collapsing, whether it's the old record label system or the cinema studio system, that just as these things fall away and just as these things get disrupted, new structures and new artists fill that space with the things that they're making. The first thing we built was our own multi-user VR app, which meant we could create shows that would leverage all the incredible things that were happening in the VR space and in technology, and center it around the two most powerful tools that exist, in my opinion, the most powerful creative tools, which is live performance and music. That you can communicate an idea in a 3-minute piece of music and possibly a music video. You can communicate an idea quicker and express it more clearly than in any other format, especially with YouTube and SoundCloud and Spotify, that you can get an idea out there quicker and more efficiently using those tools than you can with any other. After we played our first shows at the Institute of Contemporary Art, we got an art grant from the Dutch government. We played at BAFTA Cinema, we played at Wired events, festivals in Hamburg and Paris, and off the back of that we signed with Believe for records and Warp Publishing and Paradigm as our booking agent. And we began to realise that we could use the music industry structure to try and share and explore what we're doing using those existing tools. A lot of people told us that this would be a kind of professional suicide, that in the music industry you're not supposed to get game designers on board and app developers on board, and in the tech industry you're not supposed to release records or play in smoke-filled rooms in Amsterdam. It was a unique situation, and it was also an exciting place to be because no one could really tell us we were doing it wrong, but also we had no idea if we were doing the right thing. The old system and the old tools for using art and technology, the argument is that those aren't the album, the film, the music video, aren't adequate for expressing something new or relevant about the world around us, and that there are things that are being said in video games or things that are being said with startups and apps that go way beyond what you can express with just a film or a music video. And for us that was an invitation to say, well, we want to use these tools and use those structures to get our ideas across. One question we get asked a lot is it a band or is it a startup? Because we didn't ever originally start this as just a group to release records. But we also didn't start it as a tech company. We were approached by labels and approached by management companies. Equally, we were approached as a startup by investors who were excited by the fact that we could create these experiences. And initially, we were reticent to kind of commit to any of those people or structures or companies, because it felt like it would limit what we're trying to do. But in the last year or so, we've realised that there's a lot in the music industry that helps us get our ideas across, and there's a lot in the tech startup world which gives us incredible opportunities to play shows in places we've never been, to share our ideas with people, to get new tools, to reach out to new artists, using this music industry mechanisms of touring and release schedules and music videos, and boosted it by augmented technology in the tech industry and the excitement around spatial computing and immersive tech. We've done shows at the Institute of Contemporary Art in Amsterdam, we've done events at the Barbican in London, Nuit Blanche, I Love Trans Music Festival, VR Ham Festival in Hamburg. We've been able to explore all these different ways of communicating. We have gamers that come to our shows, we have art fans, we have electronic music nerds, we have all these different types of people from all these different walks of life who are all curious and all excited to see what's going to happen next.
You entered into this dreamscape landscape that was somewhere like halfway between a desert, halfway between another planet.
Dat ik niet eens kon zien van wat is eigenlijk realiteit en wat is de fictie. I had to look down, and it was like you were going to heaven.
And you just forget your body, actually. You're completely focusing on your ears and on your eyes. So everything just vanish. And you're just searching because you know there is a band playing.
Like, it's so vivid and it's so colorful, and at the same time you don't really know where you are. It's just a place where you're sort of captivated by all the visuals and the sounds around you, and I really couldn't get enough of it. It was triggering my interest so much that I wanted to stay there and go further and explore more.
Where are the boundaries between those two worlds?
It was like entering into a sort of a dream state, I would say, and I was thinking halfway like, wow, I've never done an LSD trip or something, but surely it must be something like this.
It's a great journey, of course, through space and time, but it's also the good thing about it is that it also it's not only.
How did it feel when you came out of it?
Yeah, crazy. It was like I had goosebumps at the inside of my skin. So it was. Then I felt my body again. So it was that you're something. We're totally, yeah. I don't know where I was, but not here anymore. And then I came back. So it was, yeah, I think it was amazing. Yeah.
But it's more like if you're going to experience something sacred, or like going into a cathedral or something.
This is really thrilling to experience this.
The feeling of being in space because of the stars and then going to places you didn't know existed.
When the music really came on strong, it had this flip right in time to this big tree and this blackness with all these colored leaves.
Ik zag een vrouw met rode ogen. Ja, een soort van alienvrouw.
I wasn't sure if it was male or female or android or animal.
When you actually had a feeling that you're flying through space, because then you're cutting loose of everything what is around you.
Tools and the ways of working change the art that's being made. So by using a different tool, you're changing what the message is. It's this idea that the art form that you choose and the medium that you choose changes the message that you're putting across. You could argue that in the same way that the manifesto of 60s counterculture was written with electric guitars and the album format and television, this current era is being described and being defined by artists like you guys and by tools that are in the earlier stages, from real-time video technology to machine learning, virtual reality, augmented reality. Also concepts such as open source collaboration and creation, world building, game design, user experience design. And so it's given rise to a new era, and in a lot of ways it's given rise to a new art movement. The history of the world has always been described and defined by the history of art. And the history of art has always been dictated by the history of technology. Even the shift in the way that we consume film, or what a film is, because of things like DVD box sets and Netflix. The history of music as well is a timeline of technological innovation, from the Beatles using the Mellotron to Joy Division using synths, or MPCs creating hip-hop and sampling culture. And the explosion of the early days of the internet, of MySpace and SoundCloud, and the way that we would consume music in a completely different way, and therefore that the artists would create their art in a different way. This talk is a look at what this new future might be, how it's taking shape, and the artists that are at the forefront of it, and the tools that are changing everything. and the innovations in technology that have already begun to shape our art and therefore are shaping our future. So everything from volumetric capture to 5G, VR, deepfakes, real-time rendering, all of these things are at a point where we're just starting to explore them, and we're approaching a point of convergence where all of these mediums and all of these different modes of expression will be able to fuse to create a new meaning or a new truth in the way that we're looking at the world and in what it means to be alive. So the show we created draws on all these things. It looks at classical disciplines such as live music, art and theatre, but also fuses it with these revolutionary breakthroughs happening in immersive technology like projection mapping, volumetric capture, generative art, artificial intelligence, etc. The idea is to make this new hybrid form of art which is inspired by Gesamtkunstwerk, which means total art. New art movements have to be this amalgamation of all these different disciplines and all these different artists, and only then can we achieve a new perspective on life, because we've drawn on all these different talented artists who all have their own things to say and all have their own tools with which to say it. But all of this leads to this idea about, that's the title of this talk, which is about the future of technology and how we can predict the future based on the way that artists are using technology. We're in a period where there is a new way of expressing the inexpressible, and there is a new way of communicating and new tools with which to communicate it. And the thing about art movements, whether it's situationists, fluxists, cubists, any movement of thought or art is often only understood after it's happened. And so the argument with that we're putting forward as a band and as a collective and as a studio is to say that we're currently living through it, and the work that we're making and the work that many of you who are watching this are making is more than just the work itself. It's a statement about these shifts that are happening in art. Even the way that this talk is being communicated to you, or the DSLR that's filming this, or the laptop you're watching it on, or the work that you'll do after watching this, all of these are so deeply rooted in technology and technological revolutions that they are themselves a statement about the changes that are happening.
In 1844, the first year of the commercial telegraph, Kierkegaard published a book called The Concept of Dread. He was quite aware that a new environment had formed around the old mechanical one, and whenever a new environment goes around an old one, there's always new terror. We live in a time when we have put a man-made satellite environment around the planet. The planet is no longer nature, it's no longer the external world, it's now the content of an artwork. The planet, nature has ceased to exist.
Well, I think you're anticipating a century perhaps, but...
Saying that we're in the middle of an art movement is obviously a pretty massive statement, but it's one I want to try and back up. So art movements are pretty abstract things. They're often incredibly difficult to define or follow, especially while we're living through them or while they're happening. But their effect is always profound. It doesn't only reflect the state of the world, it defines the path that the world is taking. And so certain things from my perspective show us that at this point in history we are experiencing one on a massive scale. So movements often happen in times of shifts in technological or social upheaval. So everything from the Florentine masters to the Impressionists to 60s counterculture or punk culture or rave culture, a political, technological upheaval, whether that's the development of radio or the internet, printing press, Reformation, Enlightenment. For the benefit of this talk, I'm just going to refer to it as new art, because we don't have a name for what this era is or what this ism is going to be known as. How do we define this new era, or how can we tell that we're going through one? I guess the easiest way of doing this is we define what new art is, right? So new art is collaborative. If you look at the breakthroughs that are happening in real-time video production or video games themselves, you have to have someone who understands architecture, someone who understands acting, someone who understands physics, someone who understands coding, servers, networking, aesthetics, lenses. You need to have such a wide range of different disciplines that you return to this idea of total art, that the expression of all these people added up together is subsequently more honest and tells us more about humanity than any of those individual people creating their work on their own. The new art is immersive. Art can now envelop an audience, so we're no longer looking at it through a painting or a photograph or a 2D window into these worlds. The audiences can be inside the worlds that we're now making.
Professor McLuhan, is television the ultimate medium, or is there worse to come?
You've heard of the hologram? The hologram goes completely around you. Television only goes a little bit around you. The hologram is 360 degrees. But it's been anticipated by the rock music, in which you have to become just enclosed in a sound bubble. The hologram does for TV what rock does for auditory entertainment. But the hologram is technically here.
If you can watch every single Hitchcock film just by hitting spacebar, or listen to every single track that the Wu-Tang Clan ever released with 3 clicks, then logically audiences crave experiences that are more intense, that are more immersive, that envelop them, a world that they can actually visit. You're looking for something that surrounds you, something that has an intensity. We're more comfortable with jumping into different worlds. And what I mean by that is we're more comfortable with the idea of abstraction, with the idea of this reality breaking down. Perhaps we don't even feel like the real world is as real as it was, so we're more comfortable with jumping into another universe. It's less abstract, it's less of a leap of imagination, because we arrived here in an Uber that was an icon that we looked at on our phone. We paid for it with a bank account that's completely invisible. We tagged our friends that we saw. We put an image of ourselves on Instagram. Very few of these actions have anything to do with reality, and so we spend a lot of our time in this hyper reality, and therefore of course we're going to want to jump into a video game, or of course we're going to want to be in an immersive world or a VR experience, because it's less of a detachment from reality. New art is generative, so this is something that new technology can do which would have been impossible a decade or so ago, which is to write itself. The reasons behind our fascination with this go far beyond just being obsessed with something that's new. In fact, without getting too philosophical about it, one argument is that these machines, or AI itself, and these things that we've built are a reflection of us. So they are, in the same way that an adult will be fascinated by their child, we're fascinated by this reflection of our personality, a kind of a narcissistic obsession with this AI child that we've built. What will it create? What art will it make? Because it's a reflection of us, because we created it, but there's this sort of fascination and terror with what it will do, because it's off on its own in our image, creating things. New art is interactive, so the way that we engage and consume art has become a lot less passive. We'll always want to be told stories, we'll always want to sit back and watch a film, but suddenly we have agency. Suddenly there's a medium where we're in the film, or we're alongside the artist. The role of the creator has become less about forcing someone to look at one way or the other, and it's more about building a world and gently guiding them, taking a step back while your player or your audience experience the thing we've created at their own pace or in their own way. Our audience can suddenly do more than explore our work. They can tear it apart, they can reconstitute it and remix it. So new art is open source. In the same way that the actual interaction with the work has become an engaged and interactive experience, the creation of the art itself has become a participatory event. So the work is separated from simply creators and audience. The audience have an active role in its creation.
You're arguing about something more profound.
Oh yeah, I'm talking about the actual context, and the state of content is going to be so different to anything that we can really envisage at the moment, where the interplay between the user and the provider will be so in simpatico. It's going to crush our ideas of what mediums are all about. But it's happening in every form. It's happening in visual art. The breakthroughs at the early part of the century with people like Duchamp, who were so prescient in what they were doing and putting down. The idea that the piece of work is not finished until the audience come to it and add their own interpretation, and what the piece of art is about is the grey space in the middle. That grey space in the middle is what the 21st century is going to be about.
A good example of this was the recent Sonic film that was made, where images were released of how the film would look, and there was an uproar in the gaming community and film community. Everyone hated how it looked, and the director went back to the drawing board and they built it all from scratch because of the feedback from the audience. Before a film was even made, the audience was participating in its creation. I think that's just the start of it. If you look at things like Roblox or Minecraft or Fortnite, this idea that the consumer of the art is building the art itself is only going to become more and more pronounced. The last thing I'm going to leave you guys on is this idea of our role. How can we tell the future through art and technology, and what does it mean? We're writing this new manifesto with the work we're making, and the technology that we're using is doing more than describing the world around us. We're defining the world around us, and the images and games and films and worlds that you guys are building and that Mirrorshot as a collective is building, it's the way that we are expressing the world around us. Thanks so much for watching this talk. Get in touch with us via our website www.mirrorshot.com, or on Instagram or Facebook or anything. We have some events lined up that we're announcing soon, and we'd love to feature your work. We also have a variety of resources available to help artists along their way. Thanks so much for having us.